February 1967, Daytona International Speedway. The timing board flashes a number that makes no sense. 180.831 miles per hour. The fastest qualifying lap in NASCAR history belongs to a car that shouldn't exist. An unsponsored black and gold Chevelle built in a Florida garage by a man in a grease-stained cowboy hat. The Ford and Chrysler factory teams have spent millions. They've been beaten by a car that cost a fraction of their budgets. NASCAR officials are furious. Competitors are screaming about cheating. And they're right. This Chevelle breaks every rule in the book. The problem is, most of those rules haven't been written yet. Henry Yunick earned his nickname from a smoking motorcycle he raced as a teenager in rural Pennsylvania. By 1967, everyone just called him Smokey. He was the son of Ukrainian immigrants, a 10th grade dropout who had flown more than 50 bombing missions over Europe in a B-17 Flying Fortress. After the war, he picked Daytona Beach because it looked good from the air. In 1947, he opened a garage and put up a sign that would become legend. The best damn garage in town. By the mid-1960s, Smokey was already NASCAR royalty. Twice named Mechanic of the Year. 2 Daytona 500 wins as an owner. His black and gold Pontiacs had put Fireball Roberts on the pole 3 years running. He understood engines better than anyone alive. But in 1966, the sport was chaos. Chrysler had boycotted. Ford threatened to leave. Bill France himself admitted the rules were bent to keep teams racing. General Motors had officially withdrawn from competition. Unofficially, they had Smokey. He would build their Chevelle with no corporate sponsorship, no factory budget, no army of engineers. Just one man, one small garage, and a rulebook about to be read more carefully than anyone at NASCAR had ever imagined. Smokey's advantage was simple. He read the rulebook. The 1960s NASCAR regulations were shockingly sparse, barely 90 pages. They told you what you could not do. They rarely specified what you had to do. Most mechanics saw restrictions. Smokey saw possibilities. The Chevelle he built for the 1967 season looked stock. It was not. Every panel had been subtly altered. The body was shifted backward 3 inches on the frame, moving the center of mass toward the rear for better high-speed stability. The floor was raised. The roof was lowered. The result was a smaller frontal area pushing through the air. But the changes were so gradual, so distributed across the entire car, that the profile still appeared factory correct. The front bumper was set back into the bodywork and deepened by 2 inches. This created an air dam that forced air around the car rather than underneath it. Smokey had essentially invented ground effects for stock cars, a full decade before Lotus introduced the concept to Formula One. The glass windows were replaced with lighter Lexan and fitted flush against the body to eliminate drag-inducing gaps. Panel gaps everywhere were closed and smoothed. At the rear edge of the roof, Smokey formed a subtle lip that turned the entire car into a downforce-generating spoiler. The engine told its own story. Officially, a 427 cubic inches V8, Smokey had actually de-stroked it to 416 cubic inches. Less displacement meant higher revs. Higher revs meant more speed on Daytona's long backstretch. The engine was mounted as a stressed member of the chassis, adding rigidity without adding weight. The frame itself was offset to the left, biasing weight toward the inside of the oval's turns. Rumors spread that the Chevelle was built to 7/8 scale. This was false. The car matched production dimensions, but dozens of tiny modifications, each individually insignificant, combined into something that looked like a stock Chevelle and drove like nothing NASCAR had ever seen. Curtis Turner climbed into the black and gold number 13 for the 1967 Daytona 500 qualifying session. Turner was a legend himself, a hard-living Virginian who'd been banned from NASCAR for 4 years for trying to organize a drivers' union. Now reinstated, he was about to make history. The timing board flashed 180.831 miles per hour. No NASCAR driver had ever officially broken 180. Turner had just done it in an unsponsored Chevelle built in a garage in Daytona Beach. The Ford and Chrysler factory teams were furious. NASCAR competition director Bill Gazeway inspected the car repeatedly, certain something was illegal. The profile looked correct. The engine displacement checked out. They could not find the violations they knew existed. Big Bill France made the call. The publicity of the 180 miles per hour record was too valuable. Let the car race. Turner led laps during the Daytona 500, but suffered engine failure in the final 100 miles. He finished poorly, but the message had been delivered. Smokey's Chevelle was the fastest thing on the track. Months later, at the Atlanta 500, Turner put the same car on the pole again. Then disaster. Coming off turn 4 during practice, the rear end broke loose. The Chevelle barrel rolled at least 6 times down the front stretch before coming to rest as twisted wreckage. Turner walked away without a scratch. The roll cage Smokey had built saved his life. The car was destroyed. Smokey had the wreck crushed into a cube and set it outside his shop. Then he started building something even more radical for the 1968 Daytona 500. This time, he constructed an entirely custom frame. NASCAR rules allowed teams to use any manufacturer's frame for safety reasons. Smokey interpreted this literally. He manufactured his own. Weeks before Daytona, he called Bill France to confirm there would be no problems. France assured him everything would be fine. At technical inspection, officials handed Smokey a list of required changes. At the top, replace the custom frame with a production Ford frame. The entire car was built around that frame. Compliance was impossible. Inspectors removed the fuel tank to examine it. Smokey looked at the list. 9 violations. He climbed into the car, fired the engine, and said 4 words that became NASCAR legend. Better make it 10. Then he drove out of the speedway and onto the public road, the fuel tank still lying on the ground behind him. He had hidden 11 feet of 2-inch diameter fuel line inside the car. It held 5 extra gallons, enough to get home. NASCAR's response was immediate and permanent. When teams arrived at Daytona for the 1967 Firecracker 400, officials were waiting with something new. Body templates. Metal forms shaped to match exact production car profiles, roof, hood, trunk, fenders. Every contour now had to match within precise tolerances. 49 of 50 cars failed initial inspection. The rulebook Smokey had exploited was being rewritten in real time. Templates evolved into the system NASCAR uses today, 30 separate forms, with tolerances as tight as 0.07 of an inch. The vague regulations of the 1960s became the most detailed technical specifications in motorsport. But here is the twist nobody expected. Nearly everything Smokey pioneered became standard. Custom-built frames are now mandatory. Aerodynamic development dominates modern racing. Flush-mounted windows, roof spoilers, ground effects. The innovations NASCAR rejected in 1968 define the sport in 2026. Smokey was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1990. He has never been inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. His feud with the France family outlasted his life. When asked about the accusations of cheating, Smokey had one answer. All those other guys were cheating 10 times worse than us, so it was just self-defense. He never apologized. He never needed to. Smokey Yunick died in 2001, still living in Daytona Beach, still wearing that grease-stained cowboy hat. He spent his final years writing his autobiography, over 1,000 pages of stories that read like tall tales, except most of them were true. The black and gold Chevelle that never raced sits in a private collection today, a monument to what happens when genius meets a rulebook full of holes. NASCAR filled those holes. They had to, because Smokey Yunick didn't cheat. He just read the rules more carefully than anyone else and built the future before anyone knew what it looked like.